I want to have a discussion today about what it is to be a genuine revolutionary. When we speak of genuine revolution, we are talking about actual fundamental progressive social change. And we are talking about it from the unique perspective of the new African in America. It's important for me to say that. And if we are to understand what we mean by being a genuine revolutionary, first of all, you need to understand how this contradiction came into being. Materialist dialectics holds that contradiction between opposing forces exists within the development of all things. And before these contradictions begin to influence things around you, it is the contradictions inside of a thing which give rise to determine its influence on the existence and development of other contradictions. The contradiction between the U.S. ruling class's concept of law, its concept of nation, its concept of sovereignty, and the actuality of it in America has always been at the heart of both its social ills and its capacity to sustain the cooperation of its population in their own oppression and exploitation. This is particularly true of the new African in America. The contradiction has never been more pronounced or sustained than it has been in America's relationship to our people. The concepts of law, the concepts of economics, the concepts of political power in America are based on the values of its dominant class, the capitalist or ruling class, while the concept of genuine justice, true freedom, genuine equality is based on the upholding of human rights transferred to a common power apex through the mutual agreement of two or more people or two or more groups of people. These two concepts conflict with one another fundamentally and violently. To understand the paradox that is at the root of our oppression, we must understand its etiology, how it came into being, how it got here in the first place. The modes of production and appropriation are determining factors in the composition of a society, of which class will rule that society, which people will dominate its every area of social life. When the Euro-American bourgeois settler overthrew colonial British socio-economic organization in North America, it retained for itself the same privileges of usurpation that the aristocracy enjoyed during the feudal epoch of Europe. They simply replaced, through the restructuring of the modes of production and appropriation, the layers of illusion utilized by kings, queens, and dukes. What I'm talking about is the mysticism of symbols, political, religious illusions like the divine right of kings, etc. That's the stuff the Europeans used to dominate their populations. But with the bourgeois, they replaced that with naked self-interest, direct exploitation, pseudo-scientific justifications for inhuman brutality, and open and unashamed oppression. Human worth itself was reduced to mere exchange value, and all of social life was commoditized for efficient valuation, barter, or disposal. Our lives, the lives of new African people, were no different. These values made up the basis of morality for the American ruling class. And to consolidate their power, they imposed these values on the whole of society in the form of quote unquote law. And its enforcement apparatus, the state. The institutions of American society were structured from religious and educational institutions to labor and law enforcement institutions to orientate the population in these notions of morality and law. Do you think the rampant individualism that is apparent in every black community today This I and me mentality emerged directly from our people. When we came to these shores in the hulls of their slave ships, we came from sovereign nations, the Ibo, the Wose, the Minamatapan. Every last one of these civilizations were predicated upon the principle of communalism. That is where socialism came from. It was predicated upon the strength of my tribe, the strength of my people, the strength of our unity determined our strength in the world. We were stripped of that. Those notions were erased from our minds and they were replaced with their values. The underlying basis of those values that they imposed on us were profit and violence. In so doing, the U.S. ruling class embeds the illusion into the whole of society that the ruling class's interest and your interest are one and the same, when nothing could be further from the truth. Thus, they develop a slavery of the willing in modern America, hierarchical and authoritarian in nature. The function of these institutions was to reproduce these warped values in society as a whole, based on one's class, cultural group, and resulting social function, as the supreme rule of social life. This process of successive indoctrination ensured that these values would be reproduced in the family unit and reinforced in every area of people activity outside of the home. This process possesses its own unique characteristics, depending on the particular race, class, strata of the population that you happen to represent. Whether they ruled or were ruled, this assimilation process to patriarchal, authoritarian, white male dominance and capitalist class morality, of individualistic competition in pursuit of the accumulation of private wealth over the course of America's historic maturation resulted in the unique U.S. mass psychology of fascism, which is at the root of many of its contradictions today. When you see these brothers running around talking about Trump, you are seeing in black and white a reflection of the mass psychology and fascism in America. Central to its maintenance, central to ensuring the capitalist class's dominance, and the rationalization of the atrocities necessary to both engage in shadow slavery, to establish the capital they needed to produce the global hegemony that America enjoys today, and seized the North American landmass, was the pseudo-scientific justification for both Native American extermination and the system of genocidal slavery in the New World. This assimilation to the ruling class took its own unique form for each culture and class subjected to its domination. For the New African in America, for our people, it took the form of brutal enslavement. This enslavement was justified by the pseudoscientific assertion that Africans were innately inferior to white people and by nature subhuman, thus compelling the adoption of the pseudo-religious mysticism of America's self-imposed, quote, white man's burden to civilize and Christianize the savage. This systematic dehumanization and inferiority indoctrination was given its material force in the dual evils of racialization and the incomprehensibly savage process of man-breaking, unique to American enslavement. From the perspective of the white American, the reality and wretched state of New African enslavement was proof of the New Africans' innate inferiority and subhuman nature. The fact that we submitted to the yoke without resistance was all the proof they needed that the yoke is what we were meant for. Slavery was legal and regulated as an institution in American society. The 13th Amendment continued that institution into the modern day. Every last black man or woman that has been convicted of a felony is by law a slave. In classic authoritarian irrationality, the crime of enslavement provided its own justification for its legality and preservation in both law and morality. This is why it continues till this day. By codifying this dehumanization into the law, they wove into the fiber of American culture, ensuring it would continue to reinvent itself as long as the ruling class and state in power remained in power. However, what constantly gave rise to the lie of the peculiar institution and its justifications was the ever-present resistance by enslaved New Africans, both in the past and in the present day. This resistance to the racist assimilation process, constant, active, intelligent, and often violent, were rational human reactions, which conflict with the subhuman role European man has assigned the New African. This ran contrary to the state's pseudoscientific narrative that New Africans were naturally subordinate to European man and longed to be properly subjugated and civilized. This was a contradiction which struck at one of European man's most abiding creations and one of the foundational pillars of the capitalist arrangement itself: racism. Racism itself is a product of New World slavery and North American genocide in service to the development of free enterprise itself. This contradiction could not be allowed by the capitalist state. So an entire body of law was enacted to criminalize resistance of any kind. This, of course, required an accompanying body of pseudoscience, and this conjuration described these instances of resistance as forms of psychosis. The genuine revolutionary was a direct outgrowth of this process of assimilation and our resistance to it. Revolution has been as consistent a theme in New African culture in America as has been black people. From Nat Turner to Gabriel and Nanny Prosser, from Denmark Vesey, Frederick Williams. We have consistently resisted from that day to this day. But it was also that resistance which gave rise to repression. It gave rise to reform, which is death to revolution. And it also gave rise to new forms and new methods of assimilation. As always, it has been the resistance of New Africans, ever evolving, which compelled the state to have to descend back into fascism's second stage, violence and despotism without apology. It was the emergence of the Black Panther Party, the Revolutionary Action Movement, the Black Liberation Army, the Young Lords, the Black Guerrilla Family, the People's Republic of New Africa, the People's Army, and the Weather Underground, and the very real threat of a liberation coalition representing broad class cooperation to replace the ruling class in America and its state as the dominant force in U.S. society, which compelled the state to expand, intensify, and militarize the criminal tactics of the counterintelligence program and focus that lethal intent like a laser on New Africans in America. The state declared its intent in its own words. It was J. Edgar Hoover who said, "The purpose of this new counterintelligence endeavor is to expose, disrupt, misdirect, discredit, or otherwise neutralize the activities of black nationalist organizations and groupings, their leadership, spokesmen, membership, and supporters. Counterintelligence program employed a series of systematic criminal acts carried out under the color of law to achieve the end of maintaining both the subjugation of New Africans, i.e., their economic exploitation and social control, and imposing upon them the new role the ruling class had directed they assumed: cheap labor for their industrial factories and a major market for their goods and services. Like a malicious virus, these criminal acts worked in tandem on the subject, attacking both New African formations at multiple points, while simultaneously attacking the environments and relationships upon which these formations relied to advance their liberation and self-determination efforts. It was this period in history when we actually devised the concept of the genuine revolutionary. So what is a genuine revolutionary? A genuine revolutionary is one who understands to change the social ills of society. The solution must incorporate fundamental political, economic, cultural, military, and social change. So radical as to end the relationship of the people with the dominant culture of the time. In this case, capitalist white supremacy. That's a genuine revolutionary. The genuine revolutionary is not seen. We learned this lesson during the era of the counterintelligence program. It was a hard lesson that we learned. It resulted in many of us being imprisoned for decades. Many of us were killed. Other of us were driven underground. We learned that if you stand on a soapbox and declare your intent to end the oppression of man and woman by man and woman, you will be cut down. If you defend these principles and values, if you assert your intent, they will seek to infiltrate, disrupt, undermine, misrepresent, expose, misdirect, discredit, or kill you. This brought about a whole new science for which the genuine revolutionary must imbibe in order to both operate within an environment where everything around them is designed specifically for their exhortation, but also to ensure their success. That new science was a science of security and intelligence. You cannot assert being a genuine revolutionary and you have no fundamental understanding of revolutionary security. You cannot claim to be a genuine revolutionary but have no operational experience in intelligence or counterintelligence. Your security is only as good as the information that you have available to you. And when I say your success is only as equitable as the solutions you produce to the ills of society that are impacting the people's daily lives, what I mean is you first have to know what those ills are. What are their origins? What are their etiology? What are they based on? How do they come into being? What would be their opposite? Remember, the only genuine solution to a contrapositive social force is its opposite. Prime example, one that anybody who's listening to my voice knows to be true. If you live in a black community, that black community is a divided community. It is a community that's divided upon religion. Some are Christian, some are Muslims, some are atheists. It's a community that's divided by economic class. You got some people in that community that's horribly poor, while other people's they making do. And then you got some that got a nice little chunk of change. Each one of those different strata of socioeconomic existence are vying for their own individual interests, competing against one another as opposed to cooperating with one another to ensure that every last one of them live a better life. That's not by chance or happenstance. That is the successful orientation of U.S. capitalist assimilation. You have our communities divided by set. Some are Crips, some are Bloods, some are folks, some are people. Some wear red, some wear blue, some kick their hat to the right, others kick their hat to the left. And that's reason enough for me to wish you to die. For me to wish some pain or horror upon you or your family. You have to understand that psychology is not indigenous to our people. That is a psychology that was instilled in our people through the assimilation process. We learned to kill one another by emulating our oppressor. We learned to fear one another, to hate one another, to even hate ourselves. From the lessons that were taught to us by those who continue to this day to prey on our communities and to prey on our people. The genuine revolutionary seeks to reverse that trend. He hates all oppression, injustice, and the malignant sickness of bourgeois society. Yet the genuine revolutionary loves the people. He's selfless and caring, willing to sacrifice his very life to ensure that his people continue to exist in good health. The revolutionary places us before me. They place we before I. They understand that our strength, our very survival and good health in this world is relying upon our unity. And they display that in their social practice every day. The genuine revolutionary is aware that he cannot make himself known. Otherwise, the enemy will engage his repressive apparatus and neutralize or eliminate him or her. Instead, what the genuine revolutionary does is remain clandestine, invisible, but felt. But what do we mean by this? We mean you cultivate false form. You develop a legend and you live it, while at the same time cultivating indigenous leadership to engage community development initiatives, self-defense programs, food sovereignty efforts, which are nothing more than community development initiatives. You want them to appear as harmless as they possibly can, while in actuality organizing the infrastructure necessary to engage in protracted struggle right under the nose of the very oppressor that seeks your demise, and the continued exploitation, the continued oppression of your people. This is not easy. The genuine revolutionary is not a sung hero. He's an unsung hero. He or she is someone that you might see every day, but never know that they are a genuine revolutionary until such time as you need to know. which takes me back to the very foundations of what makes a genuine revolutionary a genuine revolutionary. A genuine revolutionary is effective. What do we mean by this? I mean, he is aware that everything in this society is organized to either capture or kill him, to neutralize his efforts, and he acts accordingly. He speaks, acts, and talks differently than the non-revolutionary. What they do actually helps people, not hurt them. His efforts on a day-to-day basis are designed to change social conditions for his people and his community for the better, not make them worse. You will be able to tell a genuine revolutionary not by what he or she says, but more importantly by what he or she does, what they do on a day-to-day basis, the practical positive impact that they have on people's lives, feeding them, housing them, clothing them, defending them, but more vitally, teaching them how to feed themselves, teaching them how to house themselves, teaching them that they can pool their resources together and ensure everybody has enough to survive in this society in good health, teaching the people to defend themselves and one another. The revolutionary changes social conditions. Otherwise, they are not revolutionary. The revolution actually is designed to end the oppression of man and woman by man and woman, not to promote it. If one is not reflective of these values, if one's conduct does not also reflect what they say, if what they do is not beneficial to the people or transformative in nature, they cannot say it to be genuine revolutionaries. There is, as the law of dialectics dictates, a unity and struggle of opposites. So, if the genuine revolutionary is an actual being in existence, operating inside the New African communities of America today, his opposite is also active in the New African community today, and that is the counter-revolutionary. That is the individual that seeks greater division, that seeks to exploit the people for their own individual gain. One who advocates the oppression of man and woman by another man or woman. One that seeks to divide us as opposed to unite us, to weaken us as opposed to strengthen us. One that actively advocates poisoning or hurting his own people as a means to economic, social, or political empowerment. The counter-revolutionary is the enemy to this people. He is one that seeks to keep the yoke upon their neck. Be that yoke the yoke of addiction, be that yoke the yoke of tribal warfare that we see is gangbanging, be that yoke the yoke of a state that has historically murdered, enslaved, exploited, and oppressed our people, continues unabated. That is a counter-revolutionary. A counter-revolutionary is one who actively seeks to stop the revolution, whether consciously or unconsciously. It's one who speaks against the revolution, whether consciously or unconsciously. One that seeks to maintain the status quo of our human suffering. This is a counter-revolutionary. So, you will be able to identify a genuine revolutionary by what he does or what she does. More importantly, if they're doing their job right, you won't even know they're there. But you will feel what they've done for you. You will have an abundant table full of food. Your children will be safe and loved. You will be educated and empowered. The conditions in your community will improve. Social life will be better. You will have the capacity to resist when others seek to come to plunder you or your community. The genuine revolutionary builds. The only thing he destroys is oppression. The genuine revolutionary forges. The only thing he seeks to sunder are the chains that are around our minds. Those that prevent us from thinking beyond the confines of the dominant culture. The genuine revolutionary paves the path to a new world, a new way of social life, a new way of seeing yourself and your relationship to one another. The genuine revolutionary reveals the contradictions inherent in capitalist society. He calls white supremacy what it is, and he seeks to destroy racism as a social construct and ideology and replace it with liberation, unity, new African revolutionary nationalism, and revolutionary internationalism. He sees and understands that his struggle is not simply confined to the contradictions in North America, but are interconnected to the very liberation of the world. That they understand what they do in their communities is interconnected to a broader struggle to liberate humanity itself. The genuine revolutionary is genuine. Think on these things. They're calls for great meditation.